part 23, and we're going to continue with Matthew 9, and now we're going to work on verse 16. And the coming up things are about an official daughter died. He's come to him, and a woman who can't stop her bleeding. People that don't have enough white blood cells is pretty much what we're speaking here about this woman. It's hard for her to have the bleeding stop on its own. But the text when I left off here was talking about why the word mourning and not using the word fast here. So if you want to learn why I'm using the word mourn here, and going through all this last video. Here, we're going to start out with just Jesus now just blatantly starting from out of thin air, talking about putting a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. Now, it's not really cloth. These are hides. So, it could be cloth. I don't know about the material they used at that time, but when the word garment is used, a lot of times it is referring to hides that they're wearing. And then it would be that a new hide is going to shrink. And if it was put on an old hide jacket, yes, it would pull away again. So you got to kind of understand, is it really cloth? Are we talking about, because I'm trying to think how I would say what they're wearing, because even though Romans were around wearing robes, that's what they done in Rome. That isn't what they did all over the place. Their officials would have wore, to show that who they were in position. The guards would have been all having uniforms, but the Romans that were in Jerusalem at this time or in the Promised Land might have not been that many, but could have been a lot of them around. But what were they wearing? You know, we only guess. When you stop and look at all the information we talk about today on Rome, just remember they didn't even start talking about Rome until about 700 years after that Rome was gone, that they went and tried to dig up history and like archaeologists dig up something and they said this exists at this time, this exists, and they tried to backfill history. But you got to remember, people didn't start writing about the Romans. They were hated. So when they were done and gone, get rid of them, you know. But I'm just saying that from what I've read, I'm pretty sure it was almost 700 years after Rome was gone that they went back and started searching all the records for Rome. No one puts a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, for the unshrunk patch will pull away, not pulls away, but will pull away. And we don't need the words from the garment. Yeah, because what's being described here, what's going to happen, and another tear is the result. Okay, so a worst tear is the result. Another tear is the result. They were fixing one tear with this patch. So was it actually clothing at their time? Did it shrink that much? No, but I don't see it that way. I see this unshrunk hide. So instead of correcting it later, I'm going to correct it now. I'm just unshrunk hide. And then hide would be here. Whoops. On an old garment. And that would be what they had at that time. So Now let me make sure that I update the text and I don't have to do it later. I did it now. So here we have, like I said, Matthew, who this is text from before. And like I said, we started here from picking up the very ending of the last part. But even though all this is what was done on the last video, so notice that I gave it a gap as showing that there's a difference in timing of the story here. Here I didn't, but it could have had a gap here. Now the text is going to talk about wineskins, okay? And wineskins were made out of hides. So they're talking about skins here. It's wine hides, but I will leave the word skins. Nor do men put new wine into an old wineskin, otherwise that wineskin will burst. Because of what the wine is doing, it's actually fermenting and creating a gas. Now, there are some wines, I can't say I know exactly what wine they were making here, but for example, the Japanese make a rice wine. Maybe they made it in China as well, but Sikh, if you've ever heard of it. And it's just rice and yeast put together, and it fermentates. And then after like 4 days, they're done, and they'll put it in a bottle and they'll drink it. Well, the way would there still be expansion left by gases? I don't know of that, but this is what I'm trying to refer to here as their wine was a quick made wine, but they left it in the skin, that the skin was much stronger and could take the pressure, so then they could go and release it back and forth, the pressure from the gases that are released. But it's this type of understanding that you got to understand why they put it in there and it was still burst, because it was still active, but it was strong enough that they could probably release it. But if they didn't release it in a timely manner, the older wineskins that were already stretched out would have cracked or burst or whatever. And they used the word burst. So otherwise the wineskin will burst. Don't need to pour out the wine and the wine is ruined. We know that when it bursts, it went to the ground. You ain't gonna look it up from the ground or be able to get it back from the ground, or land, as they would say. They put new wine into new wineskins to preserve the wine. Okay, so with that type of my understanding of what this wine is doing, it sounds better written this way. Nor do men put new wine into an old wineskin, otherwise the wineskin will burst. And I gave the reasons why. Then they put new wine into new wineskins to preserve the wine. Okay, it's all about trying to understand what was going on at that time, and I'm a little vague of how the winemaking was done back then, because I know they had barrels of wine that they used. So, but a quick wine made by people that don't have the wealth or waiting for the time for it to age correctly, this would be their wine. They just wanted to taste the alcohol out of it, and probably get drunk from the alcohol. Um, While he was saying these things, behold, there came a synagogue official who bowed down before him and said, my daughter has just died. Will you come and lay your hand on her? She will live. Okay, now she is dead, but he's coming to her. So while he was not saying these things, as he was talking, the word could have been teaching. There came an official. Now you notice I didn't use the word, add the word a synagogue official. They're trying to tell me what kind of official it is. I know that they have officials in the synagogue, and that's the way this word is always used. So they have officers, and they were like a police force that Romans gave Israel can't call them all Israelis because those in power over the normal people of Israel, their judges and their priests had these officers that could come and arrest you to bring you to court. Had that capability to bring charges against you. And I don't use that word as official there. Sometimes the text does refer to them as official. I made them officers. So if you know that that's what it refers to other times, again, I'm trying to keep one word meaning one thing and not have confusion of many different words meaning the same thing or other than. And he bowed before him. Bowed is pretty much bowing, but to bow down would have been as if he was a king and would have placed one knee on the ground to say bow down. But I just have it. He bowed before him, meaning to recognize him first, because you're seeing that he just came up while Jesus was talking, and he's going to do these things. So he bowed before him and said, not say, saying, he said, my daughter has just died. Come and lay your hand on her for her to live. Not that she will live. Her to live is more the way I would say it today, and I think it would be said back then. So while he was talking, there came an official. He bowed before him and said, my daughter has just died. Come and lay your hand on her for her to live. This was the trust that people have been hearing that he can do this. And this official just came up to him and pretty much interrupted Jesus. But I can see the emergency on his mind. Now, we know that, well, here, I guess you're going to see what's happened here, because this is now saying that he's leaving Capernaum and starting to come down, and he's going to go to Jerusalem, pretty much. The text is already leaving Lake Galilee. So this is kind of what's happening here, that he's walking, he's leaving, and this is when he came up, and the stories are going to follow that way. I just wanted to mention that just so you have an idea that this isn't all around Lake Galilee anymore. Jesus rose and began to follow him, and so did his disciples. Jesus followed him. He doesn't need to say he rose, because up here he was talking, when he was talking, there came an official to him. So I just have, he followed him, and so did his disciples. But while this was going on, then a woman, not behold, then a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages is again a word that I don't think they would have been using at that time. And I'm using the word bleedings with an S. And this is pretty much means that this woman, whenever she cut herself, the bleeding would just continue bleeding for maybe days. You couldn't stop it from bleeding. And we still have people like that today. A lot of times the doctors now for some elderly people actually give medicine that thins their blood so much that they can't um, get a closing of a wound. So they know what can cause it today, but we understand at that time people had different problems, and this was hers. I just wanted to make sure that you understood what I'm using as the word bleedings and not trying to confuse a 12-year-old by using a larger word here, but he would understand bleedings. And I'm thinking they would think that all of a sudden she just starts bleeding for some reason. That's possible. She might have not known she bumped into something, but then she recognized she's bleeding. So it's a good word to use. Um, and she's had this problem for 12 years that she knows about, and she came up behind him and touched him. And doesn't need to say the fringe of his cloak. He wasn't wearing a cloak. You got to understand, like when I was trying to tell you how they would recognize Jesus's disciples by wearing the same clothing. And that would because the people that are poor would have used something that was more durable, and hides were very durable. So how much hide were they wearing? I'm sure they had a summer hide for a jacket to be open, more for the arms to be shown than during the winter, right down to where the hands might even have gloves from hides. But the object is he would never have been wearing a cloak. So those words are just gone. So here I have Jesus followed him, and so did his disciples. Then a woman who had been suffering from bleedings for 12 years, she came up behind him and touched him. Okay. Touched his hides, but she literally just went out to touch him. Okay. So, because it's from behind, she didn't touch his hair, maybe he was wearing open armed hide at that time. I was just trying to say they have different hides that they would wear. Came up behind him and just touched him. So that's what she'd done. Don't need to be more technical than where she touched him, but she just touched him. And this is why, for she said to herself, if only I touch his garment, will I be healed? Will I get well? Because she was seeing this. And different people at that time had different reasonings about Jesus and how he was able to heal, how he was able to touch people, how he would just say to be healed. Sometimes he was commanding their illnesses to leave them. So this woman, in her mind, all I have to do is touch him, and I will be well. But Jesus turned and seeing her said, daughter, take courage, your faith has made you well. And at once the woman was made well. So here she came up behind him and touched him. But here Jesus is saying that it wasn't your touch. It was that your faith has made you well. Well, I've been showing you here in the text that it's not a faith, but it's trust. Okay? It's trust. So cleaning this up, she was not saying to herself, she was thinking. Okay? Don't need the word herself. Don't need the word saying. She was thinking, if I only, or she thought, okay, because this story is told a different way, a different book. So I think that text it makes it more clear and will be adjusted. So I'm not going to, because I could say that she thought, if I've only touched him, I will be healed. Not be well, but be healed. She wanted to be healed from these bleedings that was recurring to her over those 12 years. But here the text does say that she did touch him. Okay. And it implies that she did get well. That's why she said why she was doing this. But the writer is going to try to point this out that Jesus at that time, turning to her, he didn't need to see her. If he turned to her, he knows it was her, and said, "Sister," not daughter, but sister. Elders, I really like the way other races uh, give respect to their elders by calling them either all uncles, the males, or all the aunts, that they know that they're in a, they have a place in society to where um, they are offered respect by just walking by them and saying good day auntie or good day uncle, and showing the respect when they do this. Jesus, and here we can see that Jesus is called, I want to make sure that Jesus is referring to him as sister, because it's not his daughter. Um, I just don't see him using the word daughter. I can see him referring to him, we're all sisters, and being close in age, he would say sister. I refer to many people as brother and sister that way as well. When they're close to my age, well, you're my brother, really, or you're my sister, and this is why I did this. So I'm just trying to make sure that Jesus doesn't uh, misuse the word daughter, because um, daughter is a possession of a parent. Okay, so yes, he's king. Yes, he's ruler. She's not in heaven yet. He can be her king and director, but pretty much just saying, sister, your trust in me healed you. Doesn't need all these other words. Has made you well. Has healed you. Okay. Um, and then the woman was healed. Now, this is why I was kind of going back and forth with the word well behind me. And she touched him, and I would get well. Well, she didn't have the time to figure out whether she was healed or not. So here, when Jesus said, well, let's go read it here. She was thinking, if only I touch him, I will be healed. Jesus turned, okay, let's see. I would have to say she came up, and she came up behind him to touch him. Yeah, there would have to be a lot of text to be changed. Um, I'm going to change it. Woman who is suffering, because let's see. Let me just grab this and take this, move it down, and read it. Jesus followed him, and so did his disciples. Then a woman who had suffered from bleedings for 12 years, uh, then a woman who was suffering from bleedings for 12 years, um, was coming up behind him to touch him. Okay. For for she was thinking, if only I touch him, I will be healed. Jesus turned to her and said, Sister, your trust in me healed you. Then the woman was healed. Okay. Yes, that's the way it needs to be cleaned up. So I need these two over onto the other one here. Just leave it now, clean it up later. So now we have the truth of this sentence here. I'll clean it up here just so it's all one text. And because a lot of times when I do this again and clean it up and read it, I find I still needed to change a word or two now that I've changed other words. Then a woman who had been suffering from bleedings for 12 years was coming up behind him to touch him, for she was thinking, if only I touch him, I will be healed. Okay. But she's healed, and now Jesus he came into the official's house. Here, like I said, when it's doesn't sound like a person of high wealth, I made it the word home, and it's our official, meaning our official in the synagogue, or their gathering place. When Jesus came to our official's home, because he didn't go into it yet, he saw flute players with a crowd of mourning on head, crowd and noisy disorder. It would have been the people around this official. They would have been mourning for their daughter, for his daughter, felt or shared his loss. Very community-like type people. So he saw the flute players and the crowd mourning, and not that they're noisy and disorder. They weren't playing their latest hits here. The flute players were probably playing a softer tune in the background to set the mood, or to have that mood go with the feeling. Now, Jesus told them to depart. No, he told them to leave. The word depart isn't as truthful as the word leave. Just told them to leave. And then he said, the girl is asleep. And they started laughing at him. He doesn't need to say that she is not dead. He just told them, the girl is asleep. And they laughing at him. Laughed at him. So when Jesus came to our official's home, he saw the flute players with the crowd mourning. He told them to leave. I need to add the word for. Whoops. Needs to be read. For the girl is asleep. Could make it his daughter is asleep as well. And they laughed at him. But that was a big change. I'll get the change there too. Okay. And I'm pretty sure, I think you'd agree with me that the crowd was mourning. They weren't just noisily and disordered bunch of people around a home when the home has just had a death in the family. So that looked to be pretty much simply. I'm just changing it to more easy and truthful words and removing a lot of this double take or double saying. And when the crowd had been put out, I'll see all of a sudden they were in the home where, like I said, they had the word into our officials, but I'm having them outside. If you're going to have a crowd, you don't have inside, okay? They would be outside the house, okay? So here, when I'm removing it, I'm removing that from here, having the understanding that this has 20 by 20 room where everybody can come in and sit there. This family is not of wealth, so they didn't have large rooms, okay? But we have Jesus, they laughed at him. Then I have him, he entered and took, he entered and took her hand. So I guess this kind of goes with that they're outside as well. He entered and took her hand, and the girl lived. Okay, this news was reported everywhere in their land. Now, when it said went, this news went out. Let's see. This news went out into all that land. That tribe's land is pretty much the land. The news was reported. They had runners that went from place to place to say these things. But Jesus already had been walking around, so maybe this story is one of his earlier healings, okay? And this news would have shocked people that we now have a prophet raising people from the dead instead of just healing them. So this, the way the words are and the way they're kept, you can see that when you're looking to put all the text together and saying this was such a big news that they went out and reported to them, I'm saying this would have happened to be very early, okay? And not where it's at right now in the story. So just to let you know that when ordering, there are clues to why these things should be ordered the way I'm going to order them. So this is a recap of what we've done today, or just in this video, I guess. Yeah, it needs to be those words that I put over here on the other one need to go in here, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say that this video I'm going to close because because these are grouped together enough. I'm going to try, what I'm trying to do is get back to when I grouped them. That was actually taking like an hour and a half when I first went through it. I did many videos, and I was making them last longer, but I would go through and show all the editing and talk about all the reasoning. But I found out half my voice was right and half it wasn't. What I'm using as guides now, and this ability to put an arrow here and right and circle, they weren't coming through. They were coming through on my screen, but they weren't showing up in the videos. So I've remade everything, and what I'm hoping to do is try to get back to a system that you can see that this would be enough to do a video, even though that right now it only took, 30 some minutes to get through here. Yeah, if I start going, I know that it's going to take another 30 before I get to another group of words like this. So I'm trying to figure out a way how to get back into this, what I've done before, and cut the videos. Maybe I should shorten the videos up instead of me trying to say everything needs to be 40, 45 minutes. Yeah, talking too much, huh?